Okay. What's up, everybody? So, you are watching what is essentially episode 1 of my live coding series. So, basically, how this works, if you watched the live stream yesterday, then you know that on Sundays it will be a live stream Q&A. And on Mondays at the current time, which is 10 a.m. UTC -7, I will be taking you along with some coding projects. So a couple things before I begin. I just wanted to show everyone what, let's see here, just give me one moment here, what it currently looks like where I live from a satellite view. Let's see. Okay, so check this out. So currently, so for those who are curious, no, I am not American, although I don't dislike Americans. I am Canadian, and I come from and live in a province called British Columbia, which is more or less like the California of Canada in many ways. The weather's not quite so warm. It's very nice, mild weather, depending on where you live. Once you move towards the interior, it becomes a bit of a desert. But where I live is basically right on the bottom part of Vancouver Island down here, which is this big island over here. So anyways, what I wanted to actually show you here is this is a satellite photo of about half of Canada. So in here we have British Columbia, including Vancouver Island. Over here we've got Alberta, which is in some ways kind of like the Texas of Canada. I know I'll offend a few people, but let's be honest here. I've been to small town Alberta before, and it's, you know, lots of plaid shirts tucked into Wrangler jeans and cowboy hats. Then this is Saskatchewan. No one really cares about Saskatchewan, so whatever. I'm just kidding, but but not really. So anyways, yeah. So as far as I'm aware, up here, these are clouds, like the sort of whiter parts, and then all of this shit here is smoke from wildfires. So if I were to show you just outside my window, even though I'm like quite far removed from where the fires are taking place, basically the whole sky looks overcast, but it's actually smoke, and the sun has this kind of pretty metal orange tinge to it. It looks pretty unnatural. So anyways, I just wanted to show everyone that the province where I come from, literally like half of it is on fire, which is pretty lame. But hey, you know, that's what you get when you have idiots throwing cigarette butts onto the ground and so forth. Anyways, that's not really what I wanted to demonstrate today, but I just thought I would share that little bit. So anyways, so here's the thing. There's a couple of issues that I recalled sort of this morning from last time I tried to do the live coding. So one of the biggest obstacles is that in order for me to run a Gradle Sync, what happens is it lags my stream out pretty hard, and on rare occasions I'll even just lose my streaming connection entirely. So basically, for carrying on until the indefinite future here, every time I run a Gradle Sync, I'm going to not talk and basically do anything until it's finished. And I'm going to actually apply some techniques to try to speed up the Gradle builds, but that's kind of the biggest issue. During Gradle Syncs, there's basically going to be nothing going on. So I can still maybe talk in the chat or something like that. But yeah, that's basically that. Also, this is not necessarily going to be super exciting. What I'm about to show you is configuring a multi-module Kotlin project with Gradle, and I actually just spent Basically since 8 a.m. this morning, I have been trying to get it to compile properly. So luckily I've been making progress with it, but there's just a lot of sort of issues that I've been running into with getting this thing to work. And one of the issues with working with Gradle and Kotlin and multi-module and all these different things is that it can be difficult to get them working in isolation, but once you have like 4 different things going on at the same time, it can tend to make, it does 2 things. It makes the problems more difficult to solve because you now have like 4 different things which could cause the problem, is the main thing. And then you'll get new problems which are just like API bugs or just incompatibility issues. So yeah, so for this first episode, my main goal is going to be to get this project compiling properly and to get it set up with multi-modules, and to try and sort out now my Dagger 2 dependencies aren't working properly, so I'm going to have to try and figure that out. So like I say, this is not going to be an episode especially that's going to contain a whole lot of coding. I'll try to get to, well, coding is in like Kotlin application specific stuff. A lot of this is just going to be me setting things up. Now my goal is for the next episode, next Monday, is to just get this project set up so that I can actually start coding and actually building the application part, the data layer, the domain layer, that kind of stuff. But like I say, for today, it's mostly going to be my least favorite part of building Android applications. My 2 least favorite parts. So number 1 is just doing the enormous ceremony required to set up a complicated project. And number 2 is dealing with Gradle errors. Because like the whole morning, I just get these really... don't get me wrong, I really like Gradle. It's a great tool, but the errors I've been getting don't even really give me line numbers. Some of them gave me files to look at, and that's really annoying when you basically have to just find errors in the dark. So that'll probably be the theme of today. But luckily, hopefully I've got a couple senior developers watching or something like that, and feel free to give feedback there. So anyways, without further ado, let's just review the to-do list really quickly, and then we'll get started here. So also, just for people who like to follow along with the code live, unfortunately, I am not going to be pushing this thing until it's compiling properly. So the most recent version of this project you'll see on GitHub will be basically useless, and I wouldn't actually recommend you download it. So you can if you really want to, but I wouldn't clone it until I actually get the proper, get a version that you can actually compile. So anyways, let's get started. So yeah, my main goals are totally out of order. So later on I'll have a much more detailed to-do list in further episodes, but really this is all I want to get working today. So I want to clean up the code. So I finally have the project compiling okay as a single module project. So my first goal is going to be to get the the app module. I'll talk about it a little bit when I get in there. My first goal is going to be to clean up the app module to just make sure it's free of errors so that that's not causing any compile issues. And then I will re-add in the data and domain modules, and we'll see if we can get those working as well. And if everything works out, which I'm going to be honest, it totally might not. I just spent 2 hours trying to get this thing set up. If everything works out, then I will commit and push, and we can kind of take a sigh of relief. But anyways, we're already like 10 minutes in here, so let's get started and see if we can solve some problems. So today I am joined by a whole bunch of people. Holy crap. Here we go. We got Marco, Andev, Mo, Shashank, Deepak, and Raid. So what's up, everybody? All right, let me just set up my chat window here so I can see it clearly. And one last thing is so just regarding questions, I will try to can't talk. I will try and take a break in about a half hour from coding to spend a little longer answering questions, but for the most part, I'm only going to be able to answer really quick questions and give my thoughts on comments. But if you want long form answers, you need to go to the Q&A, which happens on Sunday. So anyways, let's get started. It's going to be very exciting, configuring Gradle. So let's look here. So let me just pull up the build here. So as you can see, finally, as of like 3 minutes before I went live, I managed to get Gradle to sync. And I figured out, and I'm happy to hear input on this. I figured out that the reason why I wasn't able to sync Gradle is I'm having some issues with the Dagger dependencies. So I wasn't able to isolate exactly which one. Usually with this kind of thing, what's going on is like probably one of these libraries is using like a different version of the support library than the one I'm using, or some stupid thing like that. So I'm not even really going to worry about that because I know it's not working, and you know, there's just, until I get the rest of the app working, I don't even really care too much about setting up Dagger. But this was one of the main causes of my main headaches today, was setting this up. And you notice that I do have sort of a custom setup for Dagger. Anyways, before I get rambling too much, let's just get started. So goal number 1 today is I'm going to go through the app module, which is the main module, and I'm just going to clean up all of the dependencies and things I don't really want to use anymore. So for example, I'm no longer going to be using RxJava in probably all of my Kotlin projects, just because coroutines is evidently a very good replacement for it so far. It's still experimental, but I'm quite confident that it'll replace the need for RxJava. And I do say that as an RxJava fanboy. I really love the tool, but the boilerplate and the setup was pretty heinous. Okay, so first things first. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to open up the app module. Try and zoom in here. There we go. I'm going to go to source, and let's just... So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through every class in this source set and just make sure that I don't have any sort of random imports lying around. And I don't see why these interfaces would. Oh, okay, never mind. So right off the bat, let's get rid of flowable. So this is a view model. So most of these things I'm basically just going to remove the erroneous import and leave them incomplete. And I'll make sure I get rid of that import statement there. I basically just want to go through and get rid of all of the red stuff. So what do we got here? Now, just a quick little tip: if you want to automatically clean imports, hit what is it? Control-Alt-O. Control plus Alt plus O as in the letter. And that'll automatically clean up your imports for you. Nice little tip there. And I can actually, I won't go through and add view model, but I did manage to get architecture components working. So I could add that in, but we'll maybe do that later. One thing at a time. All right. So what else have we got here? So, let's have a quick look at the questions. Come to the great US, just reviewing the some comments in here. Come to the great US of A. I'm actually quite happy in Canada. It's a beautiful country. So one person wants to hear about Codeine. So Codeine is a a dependency injection library written in Kotlin. My stance on those libraries, so there's also Coin if you've heard it. My stance on those libraries is that there are actually reasons you want to be using Dagger 2. So the criticism of Dagger 2 is that it's really difficult to set up. It just requires a lot of ceremony. And it's difficult to learn and difficult to work with. And those are legitimate concerns. The thing about Dagger 2 is that there are sort of deeper reasons why it's a really good tool. Part of that has to do with the fact that it conforms to the, I think it's the JSR 330 specification, which is basically a Java specification on how you should build a dependency injection tool. It doesn't use reflection, it's all compile time. It generated at compile time, and that's a huge benefit. Now, I'm not saying don't use Coin, I'm not saying don't use Codeine, but what I am saying is I don't plan to use them, even though they're yet. I have not yet been convinced to leave Dagger. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. So I'm getting a red here for user DAO. Probably that was a class from the data layer, if I'm not mistaken. Nope. So what are we looking at here? So why does this view model connect? So this is not really how I want to do this exactly right now anyway. So I'm just going to get rid of that. It seems like I already did quite a bit of work in here. So I'm honestly just going to delete all of this crap, and I would rather start from the beginning. Because I'm not going to use RxJava, so I got to strip out all that stuff, and let's just move on with our lives here. Any more? Let's see here. So Marco asks, what app am I making? So I am making a workout logging application. Now the thing about this application is that it's actually the first application I've ever written. Now this will be like the 7th iteration of it, but the first application I built in my Android career was Catalyft, which is a workout logging app. And let me tell you, the first time I built it, it looked like garbage. And then the second time I built it, it looked like slightly more organized garbage. And then finally, after so many years, I'm able to come back to it and hopefully build it properly this time. Okay, that looks good. Just about there, cleaning things up. What the hell are these? Oh, okay, so these were... yeah, I'm going to delete these entirely. So these are like front-end data models, which at the time I made this, I was into calling them view models because I actually think that's a better name. But I am going to get rid of that, and we're just going to keep the view models in each particular feature. Okay. What have we here? Just a whole lot of classes with nothing in them. That's actually exactly what I want. Okay, good. And Catalyft application, good. Main activity, what the hell is that? I think I just added that for no apparent reason. Let's get rid of that. 2 usages that are not safe to delete. What would that be? That's okay. I am confident deleting them. Now, it told me that there are references to main activity in res and the manifest, of course, so I'm going to go in and be a good programmer, not a lazy programmer, and I'm going to delete those things so that they don't cause issues. What's going to be my main activity here? I don't know. I'm actually just going to delete this entirely. Let's just get rid of that. Okay, so that's basically cleaning up the app module. So Rohit is asking, should we be using Android Jetpack components in our apps? Absolutely. I'll just pause briefly. You really want to be using Android architecture components in particular, because one of the most annoying things we deal with as Android developers is as the French would say, the très fragile the very fragile life cycle of the activity. So architecture components gives you all kinds of tools to deal with that, including live data, view model, lifecycle observers. Room is way better than actually using an SQLite open helper. If you've ever had to do that, let me tell you, it sucks. Like, I had to learn, the first database I ever wrote was an SQLite helper with a cursor and a SQLite database class, and the documentation for it was terrible. They're a lot better now, but in 2014, the Android developer docs, most of them were pretty bad. You got the feeling when you were reading them that it's like they were explaining it to someone who already knew it. So anyways, which is probably what actually happened. Okay, so I've got my main, whoops, that's not what I wanted to open up here. I think I can get rid of that now. I've got my app module here. So what I'm going to be doing with this project is it's going to compile to multiple different modules. So in the same sense that I think it's good to divide your architecture into packages. So you could do package by layer, you could do package by feature. I do both. Now there's sort of a new thing, which is you can do like module by layer or even module by feature. So if you're not sure what a module is, you'll have to maybe wait for my question break or come to the Q&A. But modules are pretty cool because they allow you to compile your application incrementally, which means you can load your Kotlin apps faster. Okay, so let's move into data. So what I'm going to do, I think I copied the code back in here. So I'm just going to sync, or maybe I forgot to. Okay, I think I forgot to. Let me just fix that really quickly here. What I did is I just pulled these files out because I wasn't able to compile. And when you're getting really stupid, annoying Gradle errors, the first thing that don't help you at all, one of the first things you want to do is just start pulling things out and commenting stuff out, because very often like Gradle configuration errors are obnoxious to deal with. I didn't mean like just setting up the dependencies, but the more complicated errors you'll run into just suck. Okay, so we're going to go through and do the same cleanup process for data, and then we'll do it for domain. Looks like data's pretty empty. Why would use case be in domain? That doesn't really make sense, so I'm going to delete that. Cool. Data done. Let's go to domain. Are these all empty? Not entirely. Use cases. Okay, there's definitely going to be some red in here because I think these all use RxJava. Yeah, let's just get rid of that. All right. Here we go. So number one, I use case T. So we're definitely not going to be using flowable anymore for this, but later on I will add in a result wrapper or an either monad, as annoying functional programmers with their lambda calculus backgrounds like to call it. I'm half joking. I hope no one's upset about me poking fun at functional programmers. So, quick question by Victor. He's asking 20 minutes of talking already. Where's the live coding? So what I'm doing right now, Victor, is I'm actually configuring this project so that it'll compile properly. So there's actually not going to be a lot of coding in this particular episode for that reason. My goal here is to show you the entire process of building an application, and some of that's pretty damn boring, but hopefully I can at least learn you a few things along the way. Okay, so I've gone through, I see there's still a couple more things. Sorry, let me shut up and fix this stuff here. Just another little quick tip. If you hold shift and left click on a tab, it'll close it quickly. So again, let's get rid of all of that. I'm going to keep all the files because I actually went ahead and created most of the use cases and some data models that I figure I will need. But I just don't want much implementation in them right now. Okay, so that's goal number one, is we have cleaned up the code. Yay. So that should hopefully fix some of the issues I was dealing with earlier. Now, one of the things I did before is I removed my data module and my domain module from the project. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up settings.gradle, and I see that it's still there, so it didn't properly remove it. So thank you. Let's see if it removed it in project structure. Nope, they're still there. That is wacky. And it looks like it still thinks domain is just a Java project. Okay. Let's go to data as well. So I ended up just copying and pasting a lot of this Gradle stuff from another project, so I'll have to make sure that's working properly. I don't think I need that down there. Why would I need Maven Central there? Yeah, certainly not. Okay, so what I am about to do is a Gradle Sync. So as I explained at the very start of the show, the biggest roadblock in doing this live coding thing is going to be doing Gradle syncs and building the project. Because when that happens, on rare occasion my stream will just totally crash. At best it will be really laggy. So if you see me not talking and just vaguely staring at the camera, then I'm doing a Gradle sync. So I will do that now, and we'll see how it goes. And we have an error. Gradle sync failed. Cannot read package name from Android manifest domain. So it looks like I have a domain. Huh. Cannot read, sorry, I know that's really small. Cannot read package name from. So I don't really recall. I guess I have a manifest in there. Is that what you're telling me? That seems really weird. So let's open up the manifest and see if I can figure out what's going on here. So again, like as I say, potentially this, especially the stream today, is going to be a lot of this kind of bug fixing. Okay. Okay, well I don't have a manifest there, so that could likely be the issue, but I don't, why do I need, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. Do I need anything Android in the domain? I'll need coroutines. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have to just basically reconfigure these modules, because I think what happened is I removed them earlier and it crashed. So I don't think what happened happened properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the source, because that's actually all I really care about right now. Even just the Java folder. So so this is for data. So I'm going to copy that, put it on my desktop. Okay, we'll call that Java data. Do the same thing with domain. I had to do a lot of really annoying hacks to even get it to Gradle Sync, and one of those was fiddling around with this stuff. So yeah, replace it. Okay. So let's go to here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try removing the faulty modules. Is it gonna work this time? I can't really tell, to be honest. We'll see. Project structure. So it's removed them from there, but last time this happened, it didn't actually remove them from settings Gradle, so I'll have to do that. So let's go to settings Gradle. Yeah, so it's supposed to remove them from here if it's working properly, which it is not, apparently. Cool. Okay, so now that I've got the important files pulled out, I'm just going to remove these from settings Gradle. If you're curious, settings Gradle is it's a top-level Gradle file, and it's where you list the modules for your application. So when you add a module, it should add an entry in here. When you remove a module, it should remove that entry, which it is not doing. And that has been my entire morning. Okay. So I am going to do a Gradle Sync now, and we'll see how that goes. Okay, so it worked really quickly. So it synced successfully. What is it telling me? See, okay, this is what I've been dealing with the whole morning. I just need to take a moment to just have a little vent here. So I really like Gradle, but pardon my language, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this knowledge? Okay, so at least it's giving me a place to look. So third-party Gradle plugins may be the cause of these folders existing, apparently. Maybe what I need to do is let's see. I think maybe I need to try adding an entry in here about Kotlin source sets. So just give me one moment, and I'm going to look at a different project and see if I can fix that. Fun stuff today. I don't see how that would help. Bloody hell. Well, I guess it's not actually an error. It's just warning me that these folders were created. Okay. Whatever. You know what? Whatever. As long as it's the build finished and it's synced, I don't really care. So let's get back to re-adding the modules in. So now I will now demonstrate how to add a new module. So you go to File, Project Structure. You're going to hit the plus button. So for the data layer, I want it to be Android library because it will be working with I'm not actually sure. I might do Realm instead of Room, and the reason why is I might want to make this project cross-platform eventually, and I'm not aware of Room being cross-platform. That would be strange, whereas Realm is. But for now, I am going to just make this an Android library. So we'll do that. Library is going to be called, let's make this the data library. Module name, data. Min SDK will be 21. Package name will be data. Okay, cool. So it might sync after I hit finish, so just be aware of that. Okay, and we're hopefully back. So that was one module added in, and let's add in the domain module and probably have to go through the same process. So again, so I wasn't not actually sure if I should make this just a Java library or an Android library, because I don't actually want any Android specific code in the domain module, because that's quite outside of the point of having a domain module. However, I've run into errors configuring it just strictly with Kotlin. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to make a Java library. And then I might have to change that later on, because that is an issue I've run into before. But let's just go ahead and make it, and yeah. Java class name. I guess it's going to give me one class at the start, so whatever. Yeah, library name, domain, finish, Gradle Sync. Okay, well that one finished in like half a second, so well, I'm not complaining. Cool. All right, so I've re-added the modules in, and then I'm going to do another Gradle Sync. And I'm just checking in the Gradle log here. I wish I could zoom in. That's really annoying. I'll have to figure out a way to zoom in on this stuff for you guys because that's pretty hard to see. But all I did is I just checked the configure build script, and it looks like all the modules are configuring properly. So we're basically good to go for that. So what I'm going to do is, so we have, that's item number 2, multi-module is working for now. It's compiling. That's all I really wanted to do. And now I'm going to commit. So I'm going to put it on full webcam mode while I do that. And let's commit and push. So what I'll do is after I commit this thing, I'll run a quick commercial break and we'll chat for like 5 minutes if you have any quick questions. And then we'll probably get back to a little more coding. Yeah. Now, what do I not want to add? I should be careful what I'm adding here. I can show you this part at least. Why isn't that resizing? That's stupid. Why you no resize? Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is the VCS window, and I'm just deciding what I want to add. So in app, I will commit to deleting those. Yep, that looks good. Fine, settings Gradle. One of the main things you don't really want to add to these things is build files, because those are files generated via the project compiling, and if you add your like sort of environment specific build crap and configurations, then it can screw up people who clone your repository. So that looks all fine. I'm going to commit and push. No errors, good. Cool, great. Awesome. Okay, everyone. So yeah, I'm just going to run a quick commercial break, and if you have any, what I'll say is I'm not going to answer like just large, complex, unrelated questions like software architecture and shit. But if you have questions relating specifically to what I'm doing here, or short questions, I will try and answer them. But like I say, this is not the Q&A, so I won't spend a lot of time doing that. Can't read my fucking monitor. There we go. I should really put a language warning on my live stream. Okay. So Marco mentions domain should be Java library. I agree. That is what I said. I should be able to get it working this time, but I appreciate the offer of help. So we don't actually have, I think I addressed all the questions more or less. I'll just double check. Rohit asks, would I consider doing a session on good UI practices? This has basically been, so I'm not bad at user interfaces. Some people think I suck at them, and I've actually made some nice ones. But to be perfectly honest, I'm a back-end nerd. Like, I love software architecture and figuring out the most efficient way to configure projects and stuff like that, but I don't really like teaching people user interface, to be perfectly honest. And the reason why is that, so here is how you get good at user interface. You copy other people and you slightly change it. And that's also kind of how you get good at writing code, as you learn from open source projects. But I don't really plan to do extensive tutorials on user interface, because that's what most YouTube Android gurus do, is they cash in on small user interface tutorials. I do have a couple, like I have my big ass recycler view thing, but as far as like spending a lot of time on user interface tutorials, I don't plan to in the near future. So that's a totally valid thing to make tutorials about, but I'm just mentioning, don't expect it from my content, because UI is something, let me put it this way, I am passionate about software architecture. User interface I view as something I have to do as my job. So, yeah, that's basically the situation there. All right, we'll just see. I think that was basically it for... Yep, that's all the questions. So let's get back to coding. So I didn't actually anticipate to figure that out so quickly. So that was a pleasant surprise. Okay, so what are we gonna do now? Now, one of the main tips is like always work from a to-do list. So let's think. So I've got my use cases. What I need to decide now is basically where do I want to start. So generally speaking, when I'm building an application, I'll typically try to start in the domain layer and work with use cases and what I call domain models. And the reason why I do that is that's actually something I could riff on for a little bit, and I'll give people a little educational content here, which is relevant to what's going on. In fact, let me just write it out. So, why do multi-module builds? Lots of reasons, mainly modularization, faster incremental build times. There's many reasons to do multi-module builds. It's worth the effort if you have a larger, medium to large scale application. So let me just briefly summarize what the different modules are. So app, this is basically Android specific classes and front-end architecture. So in here you're going to see view models, presenters, views. For me, that's going to be fragments, that kind of thing. In domain, so basically domain contains things which are how can I say it? Contains things which don't need to have anything to do with specific API implementations, with the exception of a concurrency tool. So I will have coroutines in there, or I used to use RxJava, but other than that, I don't want any Android classes. In general, I don't want any Android code in domain. I guess you could maybe get away with passing live data through or something like that, but that's just not really the way I like to approach a domain layer. A domain layer is basically like it's basically when you're designing a project, the problem domain is kind of like a description of your application, so what data it needs to represent and what it needs to do. And there's someone like right outside my window, contractor. Great. Well, they can watch me pontificate. They're renovating the decks outside on my apartment, so this is something I have to deal with pretty regularly. So the domain is like something outside of Android and outside of what database you're using and all that kind of stuff. It's like a high-level, abstract sort of source of truth for your application. I could give a much better description right now, but that would take a while. Data is really self-explanatory. Data I/O implementation. So we're talking databases, we're talking networks, we're talking back-end type stuff. So it helps to separate these things, particularly when you're working with Kotlin. And the reason why is that Kotlin needs to be compiled first into, I think, Kotlin bytecode, then to Java bytecode. So there's like a two-step compilation process. So one of the ways you can deal with that is to divide your project into different modules so that you're not building one giant project each time. You can, if I need to test my data module, I just compile the data module and run tests on that. So it's really quite useful. So let's get back to what can I do that's meaningful in the next couple of minutes? Let's try and figure out that dagger thing, and then that'll be the last thing I do for today. So I'm actually just going to ask people, because I wasn't really able to figure out how to solve this problem. So what is happening? Let me just try and execute it. So I'm going to uncomment all of my dagger dependencies, which is quite a few when you're working with Kotlin and Android support. So, and I'm going to sync it, and probably it's going to throw an error. There it is. So this is the error I spent forever trying to figure out this morning, and didn't really, all I was able to do was isolate that it has to do with this dagger dependencies here. So all it says is cannot convert a null value to an object of type dependency. So that kind of gives me a hint that some dependency is null, I guess. But unfortunately for me, it doesn't give me a specific line number. It just says unsupported notation exception here. Cannot convert a null value. So it's really not giving me a lot to work with. Now, like I say, I managed to isolate that this was something in here is causing the error. So what I think I'm going to do next is I'm going to try and figure out which exact dependency is causing the issue. So let's just comment them out and synchronize one by one. Okay, not Dagger main. I would bet money that it's probably this support library here. Hopefully the stream isn't crashing while I do this. Okay. Cool. Let's try Android support. I'm really pleasantly surprised by the fact that the stream is not crashing while I sync. Okay, that's working. Looks like it is the Kotlin Annotation Processor. One of them anyways. Okay. And we only have one left. Okay, this is the cause of the error. Alright. So I know most people watching this probably understood what I just did there, but I just want to really emphasize this point. When you're working with build tools like Gradle, you will very often be given errors which don't really give you a lot of information. I would have loved if it had just said, you have an error on line 59. But there could be perfectly valid reasons on the back end why they're not able to give me more information. But at the end of the day, it just sucks that sometimes you have to manually go through and just, you know, comment this thing out and see if it works. So I have verified that this is the issue, this Kotlin annotation processor. So I'm going to open up versions.gradle, which is where I keep all of these things. And I'm going to try and figure out if everything is correct. Let me look up the, let's see here. So what I'm going to do, one of my sources of truth when I'm dealing with annoying Gradle configuration is to actually open up architecture components samples. This is like one of my favorite repositories ever because it's open source and awesome and made by great developers. And I'm going to have a look in here. So first thing I want to know, did I add Kotlin capped to my Gradle? I think I did, but let's just double check that. So let's go to, I'm going to hit Control-Shift-N to open a file. That'll be build.gradle app. I didn't even need to do that. I think it was open in a tab. I'm such a genius. Okay, I do have Kotlin Annotation Processor. If you're ever wondering what APT means, it's like Annotation Processing Tool. Okay, so next I want to look specifically at the, do they use this processor? So I'll go down to the, I don't think I see that dependency, so I might be able to actually just get rid of it. Android processor. Yeah, I think that's the issue. Oh, wait, no, they do have that. Huh. I'm actually just going to copy this right in because I don't have, I do have two monitors, but just so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So I'm just going to compare. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, no, sorry, 5 dependencies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Same dependencies. Do they use capped in their build Gradle is my next question. Maybe I'm not supposed to use capped with that one. Probably I would be. App, build Gradle. Huh. What's it called again? Android support compiler. Yeah, so they do use capped, so I'm still kind of left in the dark as to why that's not working properly. Did I misspell something? don't think so. Yeah, let's look at the comments. Any ideas, mesdames et messieurs? Oh, looks like someone spotted it. In the app module, I'm using a different name for processor. Okay. So, what is the name I'm using here? Processor APT. That doesn't sound right, does it? That should be... What the hell am I looking at? Dagger. Android APT. Thank you. Isaiah found it. What was it? I already forgot it. Android APT? Yeah. And... oh, shit. It's working. Thank you, Isaiah. Isaiah. Good eye. So again, another common thing with Gradle is that very often your issues will be caused by just misspelling something. So it would be nice if they could somehow give like a line number and maybe tell me this thing is not found, but hey, I'll take going through my code with a fine-tooth comb if I have to. So that's going to be it for code for today. I'll generally plan to do about an hour for these live streams. And yeah, so basically to just recap what we did, the main purpose of this episode was just getting everything compiling properly. So we cleaned up the code, got rid of the RxJava stuff and some erroneous imports. We set up a multi-module project and got it compiling, and then committed and fixed the Dagger issue as well, which was just me totally writing the wrong name for a dependency. And yeah, so that's basically it, everyone. Thank you so much. I'll hang around for a couple minutes to banter and answer questions, but that's about all that's going to be left for now. Of course, Coding in Flow asks, what's crack-a-lackin'? Well, considering that I am a cracker, not this room. That's kind of a... so for my ESL friends, there is a saying, what's crack-a-lackin', which kind of means like, hey, what's up or what's happening? And I heard one story that that has something to do with a room not having white people in it. I don't know if this is true, but cracker is a word to describe a white person in North America. I don't find it to be a particularly offensive term, because back when I was eating carbs, I quite liked crackers, but I think it has to do with, like, I heard a story, I don't know if this is true, that it has to do with a whip cracker, implying that so this has nothing to do with me or my family or my heritage, because I'm from Canada, where we were actually quite nice to black people. But it has to do in America, allegedly, with a whip cracker. So I don't know if that's actually true or not, but, you know, I probably should shut up about that stuff, because I find we just can't be adults and talk about race properly with most people. It's just such a horribly tribalistic part of human nature. But I don't know why I'm rambling about that. Mainly because I don't have any questions. So no more questions. Thank you for watching, everyone. And I do have a question. Using Lifecycle. What do you mean, and dev specifically? Do you mean Lifecycle from architecture components? Do I have the video where I explain context? Asked James Alexander. I just checked my channel and it's like the third or second most recent video. I'm quite proud of that one, actually. It's quite funny. So I'll just hang out for a bit. And Dev, if you could be a little more specific. Oh. No worries. You're welcome, James. And thank you, The Raw, for staying up until midnight. I do apologize to my viewers across the world. I know it's very late in India and Asia, and that's where a lot of my viewers come from. I'm gonna wait like a minute. Okay, architecture, components, lifecycle. Okay, I can definitely riff on that for a couple minutes, and then we'll call it a day there. I will be using it in this project anyway. Let me just pull up the class here. Okay, so what do we got? Lifecycle owner. Okay, I'll try and hopefully this will answer your question. I'll try and summarize it. So, and Dev asks, could you briefly summarize lifecycle from AAC? So, yeah, so let me summarize it like this. So one of the most common issues Android developers face is activity lifecycle events. So we're talking, you know, just the typical on create, on stop, on destroy, this kind of stuff. And so I'll call we'll say life cycle events, so which are triggered by changing activity, receiving phone calls, changing phone orientation, all kinds of things. So lifecycle events, if handled improperly, will ruin your user experience. So the most common issue, we can talk about like little edge cases like receiving phone calls and stuff like that, but the gist of what you need to know is that when the user rotates the phone, unless you have restricted the orientation or the user has restricted orientation on their phone, then what'll happen is the activity gets destroyed. So let me show you the lifecycle diagram. So, Android lifecycle diagram. So in essence, this is a good little diagram. Oh, sorry, I'm in cam horror mode. I mean, sorry, full webcam mode. Okay, so this is a cool little repository. It just has a giant diagram of the full Android lifecycle. And what we're worried about is, so let's say, for example, let's say you have a database. We'll say it's just a raw SQLite database over here. Over here is the front end of your application, activity, or we'll just say activity for simplicity's sake. I advocate using fragments for your UI, whatever, beside the point. Whatever, so you've got your activity. So the user pushes a button to log in. So that, or just to retrieve their notes or something, I don't know. Doesn't really matter which IO device, just the general situation. So user hits a button, and then a message gets sent to the database. Look up this record. So right after that occurs, a phone call comes in to the application, or maybe the user tilts the phone accidentally or deliberately. So that message has gone to the back end, and if you don't handle things properly, what'll happen is it will call back to the front end, except guess what? The front end doesn't exist anymore, and you will get a null pointer exception. There are other issues. So if you don't use on save instance state or on resume instance state, which is one way to handle temporary state, when the user tilts the phone, then if they've inputted like half of like a big ass form, then all of that form data will just be lost. I think sometimes Android has some feature where it'll maintain data inputted in views, but like you don't want to be counting on that. And so there's different ways to handle this situation. So let's get back to what Lifecycle does for you. What Lifecycle does for you is you basically have like two things. You have a Lifecycle owner, which would typically be activity or a fragment. And then you have a Lifecycle observer, which generally speaking, you want that to be like maybe a, you actually don't need to make view model as a Lifecycle observer. It does it automatically. So let's say maybe a presenter, whatever you might want talking to your activity. So just a special note, view model and live data are automatically Lifecycle aware. What that means is if you use view model specifically from architecture components, I'm not saying view model as in the architecture, I'm talking about a class here. If you use either of those things, the message can get sent to all the way to the back end, but between the back end and your front end is either view model or live data in a way. Just roll with my explanation here. And so those things, so let's say the user hits the button again, the message gets sent to the back end looks up the record and passes it back either through live data or to a view model. And at the same time, the user tilts the phone. If you're using view model or live data, which are Lifecycle aware, they are Lifecycle observers behind the scenes, then they will know not to push that data to the attached view. So what the Lifecycle library specifically does for you is it allows you to sort of create Lifecycle observers out of your own custom classes. So I could, for example, have a, let's go to Kotlin MVP calculator. So I could make my, oops, that's not what I want. So I could make my calculator presenter extend, I'm not sure if I have it here. I'm not sure if I've added it, but yeah, I could make it extend Lifecycle owner, or observer rather, and have it basically observe my activity or fragment. Now you can handle this stuff without these libraries, and what we used to do before architecture components came out, and what a lot of people still do, is in their view. So it could be an activity, it could be a fragment. But what they'll do, as you can see here, is in the lifecycle methods, I either tell the presenter, hey, you know, when the view starts and it's working, bind to the presenter, listen for the data. When we call onStop, okay, just tell the presenter, just cool your shit and don't give me any data because I do not exist right now, or at least my view doesn't exist right now. So hopefully that pretty much summarizes it for you. So you probably don't even really need to use the lifecycle specific part of that library. I would generally advise learning about view model and live data because they're both really good workable options. But you absolutely can use Lifecycle Observer and the Lifecycle library. The last point I'll make is that they allow you, if I still have the... What they allow you to do is they allow you to handle it through annotations. So where is it? Yep. So this could be like my presenter, for example. And if it implements Lifecycle Observer, then I can create these little annotated methods. So what this will do is whatever I'm observing, whichever lifecycle I'm observing, when onResume gets called, so for example, when onResume gets called in the activity, this code, where did it go? This code will fire. And then, so let's say I want to disconnect to a service, I want to not send data to the view, etc., then you could handle it that way. So that is my answer for what Lifecycle is, and hopefully that helped out. All right, I'll just check the comments one last time, and that'll be it for today. All right. Cool. Looking good. All right, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next week.